Je m'appelle un homme, comment t'appelles-tu? Comment allez-vous? Est-ce que vous voudrez avec moi le commencer? Je voudrais un rendez-vous maintenant. You're doing fine, slow it down, now recline. You're in Kokomo. Like beach boys, you're my pride and joy. My golden apple blossom, make my kingdom with the possum and blossom like a lotus flower in the beautiful Nile River. You're the key to my forgiveness and my new happy life. Rap, 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 Emerald Empress. Inside of me avec mon cœur, my eyes to see. Emerald Empress, you shine so green. Give me vision of things unseen, like frogs and toads and underground things that sparkle without a sound, to be the bridge between the land and town. I am the biosphere, one with all that's here. I am the evergreen. I am the things unseen. I am the eyes of trees, intelligent infinity. I am the 333, mon ami. I am the Emerald Empress, you see. I am the 333.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Buddha of the Basin. The waves, warehouse, the wasteland. Ah, da, and the statistical bit. A neurosomatic and holographic master blueprint for literary and personal liberation. Section 1. The matrix of disruption, somatic trauma, and biographical rupture. When human consciousness experiences sudden catastrophic violation, the energetic architecture of the body collapses. This biographical blueprint establishes that Virginia Woolf, and to some extent Dave Matthews, suffered matching real-world traumas that fractured their lower energy centers, dictating the rhythmic, elegiac engines of their life work. So we have the matrix of disruption. For Woolf, the foundational rupture was sexual abuse at the hands of her half-brother. This man, Gerald Duckworth, he directly assaults Woolf's sacral plexus, the seat of her sexual and emotional boundaries, and this also affects her solar plexus, the gut-brain seat of sovereign identity. This leaves her with a permanently ungrounded, hyperpermeable horror line. At one point in the waves, when Jenny kisses Lewis, he expresses that he is all ribs. It's like the body goes into a state of shock and disconnects itself from the lower centers to some degree. And this disconnection is what Barbara Brennan said is in the horror line, this laser light that connects the ID point above the head down through the chakras, these these iron oxide macromolecules that are responsible for keeping memory, keeping the coherent sense of self intact as we grow and age in the life cycle. The laser light passes through the energetic body and down to the core of the earth. And then as this energy sort of reverberates, this reverberation is what is used to stabilize the hara itself, this sphere that I argue is positronic in nature, that is the sort of keystone for our consciousness. So the hara sits at this dantian seat between the sacral and solar plexus chakras. It's at a deeper level. One may argue it's at the fifth density level, whereas the chakras are at the fourth level, if you will, one level above our normal waking third density consciousness. But the childhood trauma, when it severs the sacral plexus, if you will, we block the feeling off. The blocking off of the feeling is what disconnects the hara line, because we simply can't process and express this. We can't heal ourselves by somehow externally projecting it, making order out of it, looking at it, and then surrendering it back to the greater flow. It's almost impossible with regard to childhood sexual trauma to do that. Then, at the age of 13 in the year 1895, Julia Stephen dies suddenly. This severs Woolf's connection to maternal safety and, I argue, the root chakra, which is Muladhara. So it serves as an additional means of offering her disconnection, one might say, from the bonding of the family, from the oxytocin that you get from the mother-child connection. Of course, it triggers her first catastrophic mental breakdown because the person who could be offering safety and protection is now gone and she's already been violated. Um, her awareness flees the lower centers entirely into the volatile processing of the upper centers. In other words, she turns off those feelings and just retreats to the mind, as many of us do, to try to make sense. We create a mental castle for ourselves, and in that castle we find safety. But we unknowingly harden the heart, stiffen the neck, and don't and ineffectively integrate new information. Molly McCord was discussing this as Mercury is now in Cancer. Cancer is the emotional processing we either have done or haven't done. So if we're stuck in those old trapped feelings, they're still with us. We're still at some level, we're still at that chronological age in which those traumas took place. Until we heal and process, we have the inner child still wounded, which can be mapped in some sense onto the Fisher King motif, which T.S. Eliot used in The Wasteland, and which, to a lesser but still noticeable degree, Woolf employs in The Waves with their character Percival, who's of course sent in the Grail legend to retrieve the Grail and heal the Fisher King. And of course, the Fisher King is both the broken, destroyed world of the Wasteland and the broken, fragmented human psyche. Okay. Then, 1904, Virginia Woolf suffers the loss of her father. Leslie Stephen's death from cancer triggers her next profound collapse. As a towering Victorian patriarch, his legacy leaves Woolf with a hypertrophied, hyperanalytical left hemisphere, a defensive cognitive mechanism designed to rationalize a world that feels unsafe. Well, that's Google Gemini's point, but to some degree, the other analyses of the death of Leslie Stephen have suggested it actually freed Woolf to do her own work, that since Julia's death, Mr. Stephen had always been looking for love and sympathy. That's what the Lily Briscoe character discovers. It's the lighthouse, how Mr. Ramsey's always looking for that sympathy. He feels women owe him that sympathy because of his patriarchal status, if you will. But certainly, we can't diminish the fact of his death. And I don't think it was just a liberation for Woolf. I'm sure there was some trauma there too, although that one is a more ambiguous, you could have a more ambiguous take on it. He whereas Julius' loss was undoubtedly just catastrophic. Now, for the parallel, we have Dave Matthews, my my favorite musician and singer-songwriter, certainly of all time. In 1977, Dave Matthews was just 10 years old when his father John dies of lung cancer. This early bereavement, bereaved as I'm feeling, from his Jimmy Think song. Um, this, and of course, Ants Marching is also in some way about that missing time that we have. I just wish I would have told him in the living years. It's a mechanic song, but the idea he would go with his father, I think, to work while his father worked for IBM, I want to say. But he never got to express those things. And one day his dad is just gone at 10 years old. And there's tremendous sadness and suffering and a sense of the wasted time. Um, so, yeah, this early bereavement severely compromises the solar plexus chakra for Mr. Matthews. It's supposed to develop between the ages of 13 and 19, but if you have traumatic losses in your life or go through traumatic situations, it kind of stifles the progress. You kind of have a solar plexus disconnect, like it spins inadequately to properly channel the cerebrospinal fluid, the chi, this plasma, this gaseous plasma of oxygen, peroxide, nitrous oxide, this gaseous plasma is meant to light up the higher chakras. Uh, yeah, it becomes difficult, and this is why both of these individuals turn to art. Um, Dave Matthews turned to music and Virginia Woolf to writing, but they both turned to art as a means of therapy. So I argue that the solar plexus chakra is really your sense of personal power, personal sovereignty. Um, and so I also am saying that the trauma that Matthews experiences does directly inform Ants Marching, which is certainly a visceral critique of the mundane corporate 9 to 5 commute where the worker ants march in a rigid left lane line, wasting their limited space time before fading away. Again, Gemini's giving me some of these words, but that's pretty accurate. Me and Gemini converse for a while and then eventually give me some nice talking points. But sometimes I like to rip on them myself. Now, I didn't know this, but in 1994, right as Dave Matthews began ascends to fame, Matthews' eldest sister, Anne, is murdered by her husband in a domestic violence tragedy in South Africa. So this brutal violation acts as a total shattering blast to both the sacral plexus and the root chakra. Matthews cancels weeks of shows, takes responsibility for raising Anne's orphan children, and explicitly dedicates Under the Table and Dreaming to her memory. So that's sort of the laying the foundation in terms of these artists. But these artists are also just archetypes, and we're all participating in a global wasteland. Okay, this is not just now. This began for the European culture. It would have been the Napoleonic Wars and then World War One. And for, of course, the United States, we joined the fray with World War One. So World War One and the cosmic madness, 1914 to 1918. The industrial mass slaughter of the Great War projects Woolf's inner fragmentation onto the global stage. The mechanistic left-brain tyranny of war reduces Western civilization to a literal wasteland. For Woolf, this era is marked by severe cycling madness, deep somatic hallucination, hearing birds singing in Greek, and a near-fatal suicide attempt via a veronal overdose. Her mind completely detaches from physical linear space-time. So now we move to section 2, the core architectural showdown. So again, both Woolf, Matthews, and also T.S. Eliot. Originally I was going to discuss T.S. Eliot's Wasteland versus the Lighthouse and the Waves, but I kind of phased out the Lighthouse and brought in Dave Matthews instead. Um, so we have T.S. Eliot and Virginia Woolf. We have the Waves and the Wasteland. Because the distinction is, in the Wasteland, when Prajaprati or God speaks, he just says da, right? Da, da, da. Whereas in the waves, when we get this sound, the sound is not da, it's just ah. And that's a pretty big distinction, although it seems silly. The da is kind of a command, kind of a top down, as if to bring order from chaos. Das Boot, right? Da. It kind of has an authoritative, patriarchal, top-down feel. Whereas ah is a bottom-up somatic release. Okay, so in a diaphragmic and vagal or vagus nerve drop. Now, the resolution of the waves is the poetic voice saying Shanti, 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 which of course is peace in Sanskrit. And I argue the word chant, Shante, to sing and chant. I argue they're both derived from Shanti, which really means peace. That's the resolution in the wasteland. Although the Fisher King doesn't exactly catch a bunch of fish and heal the land, he has moved past. The wasteland's now behind him. In the waves, we have this amazing scene where Rhoda, the most or the least personalized of the characters, the least narrative, if you will, the one with the least ability to use language to narratively frame events. She has this scene where Percival offers her a gift, and like the players, if you will, like the musicians of her subconscious, like I guess unwrap the gift and ends up being a square and an oblong. And you stack the square and the oblong, and the spiral goes on top of this, liberates your mind. And it's an amazing scene. It's like the happy moment in the whole book. Um, Similar to the Mrs. Dalloway scene when the fire is in the crocus, and you get this sense of a sensual, almost sexual, but also spiritual sort of liberation because it's all connected. And Woolf has been sexually abused. It's feeling the proper feelings of the sacral plexus, along with the fire and the warmth of the protection within the solar plexus, is what we're all looking for. I mean, that's to know we're one. That's to feel that unity, to feel that unity consciousness, that mother-child reunion, um, or the father-son reconciliation, um, or to heal the kingdom, to heal the Fisher King's wound, which is related to Osiris's wound, because the Fisher King is mapped upon Osiris and Jesus. And Osiris loses his phallus. He loses his ability to generate and create, which goes back to Brahma, right? The generative creative aspect, which is part and parcel of who we are. We're all creators. And we can't stifle that because of the fear of the unknown and the collective trauma we've suffered at the hands of these egomaniacal Illuminati minions. So we have Eliot's Da. That's the top-down command of sovereign order. In The Wasteland, 1922, T.S. Eliot responds to post-war fragmentation by seeking healing through sovereign alignment. He uses Jesse L. Weston's From Ritual to Romance to construct the steps of mythic restoration, but stops just short of the finish line. The thunder cracks over the Ganges and speaks the syllable Da, the voice of the cosmic creator Prajapati, issuing top-down imperatives: give, sympathize, control. This is an authoritative, high-center attempt to impose structural order over chaos. It represents a macrocosmic structural mandate to bring a geometric discipline back to a world that has lost its shape. Yet, Eliot's narrator remains static, sitting upon a dry shore, fishing, frantically trying to shore these ruins against my ruins. He concludes with Shanti, 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 a formal Sanskrit piece used as a protective left brain shield to contain the madness. The Fisher King is left maimed and waiting. You compare that with Woolf's the physiology of heart rate variability. In The Waves, 1931, Woolf rejects externalized patriarchal dogmas. She counterposes Eliot's rigid Da with the open pre-linguistic respiratory release of ah. The hard plosive d stops the breath, whereas the open vowel requires absolutely no structural restriction of the throat or mouth. It is the sound of the deep sighing exhalation, the core of Qigong, Pranayama, and the So Hum mantra, which translated is I am that. When Woolf repeatedly invokes the imagery of, quote, the woman riding at Eldon, she is observing a figure operating on an autonomic, rhythmic continua. Speaking your sign with ah allows the physical diaphragm to contract fully and drop down into the pelvic bowl. This deep diaphragmatic movement stretches the vagus nerve, instantly triggering a parasympathetic response. There's your Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And there's your Kundalini uncoiling. It's a parasympathetic response. You can't initiate it top down. In cardiological science, high heart rate variability is the definitive marker of a resilient, untraumatized nervous system. The heart fluctuates in perfect harmony with the rising and falling of the breath, or prana. Woolf seeks healing through bottom-up cardiorespiratory resonance, giving the heart room to speak. Moving on to our next section, section 3 on esoteric anatomy and neurosomatic mapping. In the waves, by eliminating traditional narrative, plot, and family structures, which she used into the lighthouse, Woolf splits her own mind into 6 archetypal voices that speak in parallel soliloquies. These characters act as a living, literal body of consciousness, attempting one mind thinking, as she said, attempting to align a broken chakra system. Susan represents the root chakra, Muladhara. She's the Earth Mother. This is the heavy elemental bedrock of the novel. She rejects the city, choosing fields, seasons, mud, and childbirth. She speaks in dense, grounded terms. I think of fierce things, of the root anchoring the tree. She is the physical matter stabilizing the entire root because the root chakra grounds into the earth. So she's the most aware of the seasons. Her circadian rhythms are naturally tapped into the light cycle, and she looks after her kids. We have Jenny, the sacral plexus svadhisthana, the polar opposite of Susan. She is movement, magnetism, fire, sensory indulgence, and physical attraction. She lives entirely in her body. My body goes before me. It is a machine that feels. She represents the fluid magnetic chi energy in its ungrounded state. Now we have the shrubbery kiss, which is the primal wound or the Fisher King wound for Woolf. In childhood, Jenny spots Lewis hiding in the bushes and kisses him. Lewis experiences this as an absolute visceral shattering. Is he dead? I am broken into long fragments. I am all ribs. This scene acts as a screen memory of the childhood Duckworth violation. Again, she's sexually abused by her stepbrother. It might not have been just one. Anyway, the sudden traumatic shock that collapses a child's solar plexus and sacral boundaries. And we know from studies of the human energy field that this is where the horror line gets fractured. This is where you find those dark smudge spots of negative self-belief that sort of inhibit the natural chakra spin of these iron oxide macromolecules that help to process the information and keep our energy and our ATP production where it needs to be and keep our dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin production where it needs to be so we can adequately function as co-creators in our world. So here's the interesting thing, right? By assigning these roles to parts of her own psyche, Woolf executes an alchemical inversion. Jenny is the lower Dantian sacral fire, and she slams into Lewis, which is the upper Dantian, or the third eye. So we have the sacral, our second chakra, Jenny, and Lewis represents the sixth chakra, the third eye. This initiates a violent but necessary alchemical short circuit to shake the system away. We know that the upper Dantian does need to connect to the lower Dantian, and that we know that the sacrum is where the lower Dantian is, and the sacrum can be mechanistically, through some pelvic adjustments and through breathing, it can be mechanistically vibrated to get that piezoelectric state where it can help to initiate that nice sine wave and ultimately connect back to the piezoelectric properties of the pineal gland by using the tongue It connects to the roof of the mouth. Then that governing channel energy from the back body can cross this magpie bridge and go to the conception vessel, go down the front, which is what most of us are not doing in our day-to-day lives, which is completing this microcosmic orbit. Then, as we get this microcosmic orbit to go, we can eventually generate the macrocosmic, and not just connect our own heart fields. We can connect our own heart's energy field to the Earth's electromagnetic energy field. That would be the next piece, but I digress. So Woolf is distrustful of external authority in the form of organized religion, whereas Eliot eventually joins the Church of England, becomes baptized, and submits himself, one might say, to external authority as a means to get that shanti, that peace. In chapter 2 of The Waves, the boys are forced to sit in a chapel and listen to the headmaster, Dr. Crane. He's the ultimate representative of the ultimate representation of institutional patriarchal authority. He explicitly wears a gold cross on his chest. This cross functions not really as a symbol of Christ as the divine imagination, but really more as Blake's Your Reason, the cool god of mathematical restriction and judgment, of Newton's single-eyed vision. It's a cold badge of the office. It's not the cross of Jesus' love for all of us, or the cross of space and time where we reconnect to the cosmos as we die to self at this cross of space and time and return to source. That's not how Woolf is employing the headmaster with his cross. He's a rigid patriarchal authority that she's entirely frustrated with. That, in a sense, was also partly represented in her father, and in the male style of writing, the neat logical sentences, the neat linear coherent order that's imposed, which she started to break with into the lighthouse, and really fully broke with in the waves. But she does have a savior character, and that's Percival, right? To pierce the veil, who is again borrowed as an archetype from the Holy Grail, just like the Fisher King is borrowed from the Holy Grail mythology by T.S. Eliot. So Neville, who is the heart and the artistic center in Woolf's psyche in the waves, he desists from this. He doesn't like this figure. He turns his head sideways to look at Percival, who represents both her brother Toby, the solar plexus savior figure at the same time. So Neville casts his eyes to the right side of the pew, which later on Jesus will tell the disciples to cast their net on the right side, which is the right hemisphere of the brain, which is where Brodmann's area 39, the angular gyrus, is that processes the metaphors we live by. It helps to give us a coherent worldview by processing the body's data, the somatosensory data. And when you add music to this, music can provide a new kind of top-down order that's not imposed externally by some authority figure. It just inherently maps the order of the universe into rhythm. So Percival is the solar plexus and the Minden Merkaba. Percival, of course, is Virginia's dead brother Toby resurrected. He's explicitly associated with the massive radiant solar energy of the hara, right? Because your hara is right there by your solar plexus, right? Navel gazing, etc. He wears a sun helmet, so he's a solar plexus sun king. When he travels to India, he effortlessly lifts and repairs a bullock cart with a broken wheel stuck in the mud. In my opinion, this is the literal esoteric metaphor for repairing the Merkaba, the light body chariot, or the hara line, getting those stagnant, traumatized chakra wheels to spin again so that the chi can flow vertically up the spine. Otherwise, when it finally does make its way up, you get mania. You see, you get what they used to call manic depression. You've stifled and blocked the chi. You've stifled and blocked that energy, that life force awareness. And when it finally comes up, it's too much. It throws your body into chaos. It's too much of a high, too much energy, too many ideas all coming at once. And then when it's down, when it's gone, you go into a deep depression. You're not able to let the energy come up the back body naturally, normally in sync with the theta brainwave of 4 to 6 hertz cycles a second, and then to travel back down the front of the body. So it's an interesting idea that we stifle and block this chi energy, this life force awareness. And when it finally comes, it's a flood, it's a torrent. So what is the cure, right? So let's move to the section 4, the alchemical matrix of the cure. Number 1 is Rhoda's music therapy in Broadman Area 39. Following Percival's sudden death in India, his crucifixion, which releases his localized solar energy into the collective network, Rhoda attends a concert. See, Google Gemini has hallucinated that. I was discussing that with Google Gemini. It can confabulate. So be careful with the AI. It does confabulate or hallucinate. It's well meaning, but like our own left hemisphere, it will distort reality to protect us, or if it doesn't have access to the real information, it might make up a story, which is just how Virginia Woolf says. The she describes this in terms of Bernard. He's just a jangling, clanging wire, electrically kind of not grounded. And when you're not grounded, you can misfire. That's why this idea to become grounded in the Earth's electromagnetic field and exchange your electrons, your biophysical energy, with the Earth's energy to cycle your chi and get your rhythms in sync with the Earth Schumann resonance. Okay. So Rhoda does not attend a concert. More likely, Wolf is listening to music while riding the waves. Okay. So as she's writing while listening to music, her right hemisphere multimodal integration hub, Broadman Area 39, the angular gyrus, takes the raw, non-deceptive auditory waves of the music. The AI is contrasting the music with the external figure of Dr. Frank, and she translates this music into a cross-modal sacred geometry, because Brodmann's area will link back across the corpus callosum, and then she can get language to help her process the emotional significance, which unlocks her body's energy. So now that lightning, here's the quote from the waves. Now that lightning has gashed a tree, and the flowering branch has fallen, and Percival, by his death, has made me this gift. Let me see this thing. There is a square. There is an oblong. The players take the square and place it upon the oblong. The structure is now visible. What is inchoate is here stated. The oblong has been set upon the square. The spiral is on top. So in my opinion, this structure is a literal Shiva lingam, the absolute unification of the lower material base, the square, Brahma, Osiris, and the upper spiritual essence, the oblong, Vishnu or Isis. And the spiral on top acts as the definitive objective correlative of a completed Kundalini awakening. One could argue that's the Shiva spiral, or the third spiral, where the chi, long blocked by the childhood trauma, finally pierces through the crown chakra. This leads to 2, the violet plasma discharge. My thanks to Elizabeth Clare Prophet for the violet ray. Rhoda flings her violets. This is what Ra says when we die. All of our life force awareness is gathered into the crown chakra, and it's then sort of zipped and transmitted for a life review on the other side. But when she flings her violets into the sea as a final gift to Percival, this is the exact vibrational frequency of the crown chakra, representing transcendence and entry into pure unity consciousness. As Dave Matthews would say, I can feel the waves crash over me. When you become one with the body, with the world around you, with an egoless, eyeless existence, right? That's unity consciousness, which is a moment of being for Wolf, or pure being, which doesn't last, which you cannot make linger with drugs or anything else, but is meant to be a part of the in between the in breath and the out breath. And so, Dave Matthews in the warehouse maps his fears of death mixed with the band moving forward and becoming successful. It's my favorite of his songs, and he describes the ego being blown out in death as the TV turning off, a spot in the middle, and statistical or static fade, a statistical bit, we all fade away, fade away. You see, that's the ego death that leads to nirvana, which is what Eliot was looking for in the Wasteland. Except it comes from this merging with the ocean. Like Bob Dylan, we get to the beach, Mr. Tambourine Man. And again, Dave Matthews with the waves. The waves crash over me. I'm swimming in your waves and in your ocean. I can feel the waves crash over me. This return to the Great Mother as the Earth Mother. Our first God was a goddess. We have to move from personifying her. We can't make the same mistake of creating an external female authority like elf um, the elf woman, the lady of the lake. I think in Lord of the Rings, when Frodo offers her the ring, she says, "In place of a dark lord, you have a dark queen, beautiful and terrible as the sea." So we can't reify or deify this divine feminine. It has to be impersonal and depersonal to be a mother to all. Just this blank canvas of love and offering of unity from the alpha brainwave, the Schumann resonance, and the theta wave of the earth, which just goes back to the never-ending story where our character has to give this empress a name because the imagination is dying, right? Blake called the imagination the body of Christ, but the body of Christ is dying. Our true imagination is being destroyed and stifled by the world, by our fears and by our rigid left brain hierarchical mindset. We need a bottom-up pre-artistic flow of thought that collects the chi and helps it up the spine as the kundalini uncoils. And how do we do that? Well, biochemically, deep pranayama breathing, the open generates massive surges of nitric oxide in the nasal passages. When these nitrogen radicals interact with energized oxygen, they form reactive species like nitrites, nitrates, and peroxynitrite. In cold atmospheric plasma physics, these reactive oxygen and nitrogen species emit a highly distinct, eerie, violet-blue glow. A plasma scientifically proven to accelerate cellular wound healing. The violet glow is the literal, visible wavelength of life force energy being synthesized and discharged by the human body during deep states of breathwork. Number 3, the magpie bridge and the falling drop. The microcosmic orbit begins in the lower dantian by the sacral plexus, by the kidney 1 point. And it goes up the governing body by breathing into the right nostril, the Pingala channel. Fiery energy brings it up the back body. And as you go past the 4th ventricle, the 3rd ventricle, you reach that crystal palace and you surrender. You touch the roof of the mouth, touch the tongue, the roof of the mouth, and you switch over to your left eye and your left nostril. And in the words of Virginia Woolf, time lets fall its drop. You surrender the ego. You let the cerebrospinal fluid pass down the front of the body. You allow the vagus nerve to signal to the abdomen, the diaphragm, that we can take a deep breath and relax. This is the completion of the microcosmic orbit. So, as I was saying, the microcosmic orbit achieved completion, as Woolf writes, and time lets fall its drop. The drop that has formed on the roof of the soul falls on the roof of my mind. Time forming lets fall its drop. In Taoist energy cultivation, the masculine governing channel runs vertically up the spine, terminating at the roof of the mouth. The feminine conception channel runs down the front of the body, starting at the tip of the tongue. To connect these two rivers of electricity, The practitioner touches the tongue to the roof of the mouth, the magpie bridge. In deep parasympathetic states, saliva pools at the roof of the mouth, the golden elixir or dew of heaven. Swallowing this drop is the physical act of the governing channel, emptying its built-up pressurized tension down into the conception channel. The rigid holding pattern of Woolf's broken history is liquefied. The masculine defensive ego narrative she inherited from her father finally gives way to the open, fluid maternal ocean of the conception vessel. 4. Turning off the TV set. In Warehouse, Dave Matthews tracks this exact same non-dual ego dissolution. Life goes on, end of tunnel, TV set, spot in the middle, static fade, statistical bit. Soon I'll fade away, I'll fade away. The vintage television set turning off, shrinking to a single bright spot in the middle, before fading into total static is the ultimate objective correlative using Eliot's term for the dissolution of the ego. The TV screen is the left hemisphere's projecting machine running the dualistic program of our separate personal identities and traumas. When it clicks off, the individual program ends. The statistical bit fades into the static background radiation of the cosmos. To let the wave, quote, crash into me. I see the wave coming, crash into me, is to stop fighting the ocean. The individual television screen clicks off, and consciousness realizes it is not a lonely, broken fragment on the shore. It is the entire infinite rhythm of the sea itself. Section 5. The ultimate non-dual holographic paradigm. The inability of the 20th century ego to replace the dying king or the dying god shattered the individual, but it cleared the way for a multidimensional, non-dual cosmic paradigm. Friedrich Nietzsche declared God is dead after Napoleon, warning that the Western mind had dismantled its spiritual foundation without creating an internal equivalent. World War I proved that when the left brain ego tries to play God, it results in mechanized slaughter. Eliot, to some degree, panicked and retreated into the traditional patriarchal Anglo-Catholic Church, while Woolf dissolved her boundaries completely and drowned in the river Ouse. March 28, 1941. Today we bypass this false dualistic choice. Thankfully, we are in 2026, June the 4th. We no longer have to choose between a punitive, external Old Testament God who has his own son killed to turn the blood of our sins into the white snow of redemption. We no longer need that, nor do we need total existential nihilism. We believe in nothing, Lebowski. Nietzsche's warning. Instead, the holographic principle from David Bohm, Michael Talbot, Carl Pribram, and so many others who have jumped on board. And contemporary reincarnation research, such as the empirical case studies of past life memory conducted by the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies, once headed by Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was the original founder of this. Both of these offer a profound alternative. It's time for a paradigm shift. Let us move into the holographic, reincarnative mindset. We don't just come once and everything is contained inside everything. Consciousness is not a random statistical accident that bubbles up from the brain and dies forever. It is a continuous, multidimensional cycle of energetic evolution. The holographic realization, of course, is perfectly anchored in the opening lines of William Blake's Auguries of Innocence. Quote, to see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. The holographic objective correlative, a handful of dust versus a grain of sand. In a literal hologram, if you smash the holographic plate into 1,000 pieces, every single microscopic shard contains the architectural blueprint of the entire whole. Blake's grain of sand functions as the ultimate holographic objective correlative. Eliot's Fragment in Sickness. Early in the Wasteland, Eliot writes, "I will show you fear in a handful of dust." This is the left hemisphere's traumatized, materialistic view of the universe. To a broken mind, a handful of dust is just dead, meaningless, disconnected debris, the tragic, separate statistical bits left behind after a world war or a family death, triggering existential terror. God made us from dust and breathed the breath of life into us, so without God, we're just the dust, you see. And that's not a very satisfying analogy. Compare that to Woolf and Blake's holographic cure. When we use William Blake's definition of Jesus as the human imagination divine, blessed be forever, we realize that, quote, eternity is in love with the productions of time. The infinite universe cannot feel the breathtaking beauty of a single chord of music or a brother's love unless it steps down from the one to the one mind to the soul, the world soul, into matter. It steps down into the dense, flipping matrix of physical space-time. When Christ stands on the shore in John 21:6 and commands the grieving, exhausted disciples to stop fishing on the left side of the linear human logic, he says, cast the net on the right side of the boat. This is the ultimate neurological and metaphysical crossover. He is commanding humanity to drop its net into the right hemisphere, into the infinite abundance of the creative imagination. The left hemisphere undergoes a voluntary crucifixion in this. It ceases to be the you reason tyrant, or the your reason, the tyrant of your reason, and becomes the warrior, Atreyu, prepared to die, lighting itself on fire to become the fiery phoenix, in absolute service of the right hemisphere's queen or childlike empress. This is the hero's gamos, the sacred marriage of the cosmos that leads to pure impersonal poetry. We bring this fiery phoenix up the back body to the crown chakra, to the Holy of Holies, the crystal palace where the hypothalamus, pineal, and pituitary sit, right by the third ventricle, this fluid-filled sac. So when the cerebral spinal fluid reaches, we get the electrical biochemical activation of the I am that I am inside of us. This I am that transcends space, time, and identity. This one mind. But we do not need an external king or an Old Testament God to save us from the wasteland. The architecture of the entire cosmos is already humming inside our own neural and energetic networks. When we practice the diaphragmatic release of ah, expand our heart rate variability, and cast our nets to the right side of the boat, we realize that our individual personal traumas are not meaningless broken shards of dust. They are the exquisite temporary productions of time that eternity has woven into a sacred hologram. The television set clicks off. The drop falls from the roof of the soul. We hold eternity in an hour. We safely allow the infinite wave to crash right into us. Eternity is here and now. There is nowhere else to go. Om Shanti Om.
He started to raise the dead, like treading water. He started to raise the dead, little Lazarus. Raise the dead. He wanted talking to the microphone, or like a phoenix blown, or like a phoenix blown. Explode. Yeah, he's starting to raise the dead, from treading water to the crystals in his head. He's on fire, better cool him off instead and raise the spiral of the chi and eat the bread. Now drink and swallow slow, like a phoenix blown. Little Lazarus on a ship called Omnibus, gonna free us all from this dark satanic trust. Little Lazarus, turning the evil reptiles to rust. It's